The corridor outside the discipline chamber was unnaturally quiet. Usually it buzzed with hundreds of cadets, their languages overlapping like waves, but now it felt hollow, a void carved from tension. Every step Cadet Lyra Vance took echoed against the alloyed floor, steady and measured. She knew the silence wasn't mercy. It was anticipation. 2 Thirlan sentries stood by the chamber doors, their obsidian scales glimmering under the sterile light. One hissed softly, the universal sound of disdain. "Human," he said. Not as a name, but as an accusation. Lyra didn't answer. The microgravity ring of the academy still hummed faintly around her. A reminder she was inside a machine that wanted to correct her very nature. She paused before the reinforced door, watching her reflection in the polished steel, a small figure, short by Thirlan standards. Dark hair tied back, uniform creased perfectly, eyes steady. The door opened with a hiss. Inside, the discipline chamber was a sphere of glass and metal suspended in void. Through the transparent walls, Rika Prime sprawled below, a frozen world of storms and lightning veins. The planet's light cast a pale shimmer across Commander Zero Tharn's scaled face. He stood behind a curved table, hands clasped behind his back, tail coiling like a whip waiting for motion. "Cadet Lyra Vance," he began, his voice calm, precise, almost polite. "You violated Conduct Directive 12 during interspecies simulation." "I improvised," Lyra replied evenly. "The protocol failed to account for environmental collapse." Tharn's slitted eyes narrowed. "The point of the exercise was obedience, not improvisation." "You were told to follow instructions." "I was told to save the team," she said. "They were dying." A murmur rippled through the observing cadets sitting behind the glass barrier. Some leaned forward, others pretended not to watch. Tharn noticed them, of course. He wanted them to. He turned, gesturing to the projection beside him. The hologram replayed the simulation. A collapsing alien structure, falling debris, acid rain. The human cadet dragging injured alien teammates to safety while ignoring the command to retreat. "You disobeyed," Tharn said. "You placed yourself above the system. Such arrogance cannot go unpunished." Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Where I'm from, leaving someone behind is worse than death." The words hung heavy in the air. Tharn's scales rippled, a sign of suppressed irritation. "Perhaps," he said softly, "you require a reminder of your place in the Accord. You will undergo corrective calibration, immediately." One of the aides flinched. "Commander, the calibration chambers aren't—" "Silence," Tharn snapped. "Begin the sequence." The aides obeyed. The floor beneath Lyra shimmered, shifting into a transparent platform. Below, a ring of emitters powered up, casting lines of light around her form. She stood straight, unflinching, as the gravity field began to intensify. Her boots grew heavy, the lights dimmed. A low hum filled the chamber as invisible pressure pressed against her chest, shoulders, spine. Her breath shortened, but remained even. Tharn watched her closely. "Humans claim they are adaptable. Let us see how far adaptation goes when the body collapses under its own weight." The aides exchanged uneasy glances. They'd seen the Thirlan use these chambers on their own recruits, but never at full strength, never for so long. Lyra's muscles strained. The air tasted metallic. Her heartbeat pulsed in her ears, but she focused on her breathing. Slow and steady. Inhale, count, exhale. Memories flickered. The screech of earth storms. Her father's voice yelling over thunder. "Never fight the storm! Stand through it." Tharn increased the pressure. The floor cracked. "Still standing," he observed coldly. "Fascinating. Most species buckle at half this force." Lyra's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Maybe you calibrate for the wrong planet." The aides looked up sharply. A few cadets behind the glass stifled gasps. Tharn's jaw clenched. "Defiance wrapped in humor," he said. "A primitive reflex." "Or a human one," she whispered. The hum deepened. The field doubled again. The lights warped around her. Her knees trembled, every bone in her body screaming under the artificial pull. Her vision blurred at the edges. She focused on a single point, Tharn's reflection in the glass. She would not look away. Minutes stretched. Sweat beaded down her neck, but she refused to fall. The platform trembled beneath her boots. "Commander," one aide finally said, panic breaking through protocol. "If this continues, she'll—" "Quiet," Tharn hissed, leaning forward. She wanted to play Deathworlder. Let her prove it. Lyra's breathing grew shallow, but her voice, when it came, was steady. "This is your lesson?" Tharn frowned. "What did you say?" She looked up. Her eyes caught the pale reflection of the planet below. "You teach control through fear. We learned control through survival." A sudden crack echoed, not from her, but from the chamber floor itself. The containment ring flickered. The energy feedback overloaded momentarily, shutting down the pressure field. Silence. Lyra straightened slowly, breathing hard. Every movement hurt, but she didn't show it. She brushed her hair back, stood tall, and stepped off the platform. "Calibration complete," she said quietly. Tharn's claws tapped the console. He was furious, but trapped in his own performance. "Dismissed," he said finally. "Leave before I reconsider." Lyra nodded once and turned toward the door. Her steps were even, though each one burned. The Thirlan guards shifted as she passed. Neither met her gaze. When she exited the chamber, whispers followed her, faint, uncertain, like wind through glass. She stood through it. Someone murmured. "Didn't even scream?" Another replied. "They said Deathworlders exaggerate." Guess not. Lyra kept walking. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of her boots. The corridor stretched ahead, endless and bright. At the far end, a group of younger cadets stopped talking as she approached. One, a small amphibian species, met her eyes and bowed ever so slightly. She didn't return it. Not yet. Respect earned through defiance could turn dangerous here. When she reached her quarters, she closed the door and leaned against it briefly, letting her control slip for a moment. Pain rolled through her body like fire. She could barely lift her arms. Still, a faint smile curved her lips. She had endured their lesson. That was enough. Outside, the Academy's public network buzzed quietly. Someone had recorded the test. The footage, a lone human girl standing unbroken in collapsing gravity, began circulating before the hour ended. By the time the artificial night cycle dimmed the Academy's lights, her name was being whispered in dorms and corridors, in languages that had never spoken a human word before. Lyra Vance, the Deathworld Girl who didn't break. And for the first time since her arrival, the silence in the hallways wasn't empty. It was listening. By morning cycle, the Academy had changed. The air was thick with quiet energy, the kind that preceded storms or revolutions. No announcement mentioned Lyra Vance. No report confirmed what had happened in the discipline chamber, yet everyone knew. The footage had spread like wildfire through encrypted cadet networks before dawn. She felt it when she stepped into the corridor, the shift in glances, the way conversations ended when she passed. Her name was no longer said aloud. It was breathed, like something sacred or forbidden. At breakfast, she sat alone, as usual. The cafeteria's vaulted ceiling shimmered with artificial sunlight, and rows of species with translucent skin, scaled limbs, or coiling appendages avoided her table. A few looked her way. Curiosity mixed with disbelief. Lyra ignored them, focusing on her meal. The tray's synth protein cubes tasted like chalk, but she chewed mechanically. The pain from yesterday's test pulsed faintly in her ribs, though she didn't let it show. Across the room, a group of Thirlan cadets whispered among themselves. "Commander Tharn pushed her to 8 gravities," one said. "She walked out," another hissed. "He's furious." Their words reached her, though she kept her gaze fixed on her cup. When she finished, she stood, every motion deliberate. The hall parted as she left. No one met her eyes. They didn't have to. She could feel their stares, a mixture of fear and reluctant respect. Outside, the training grounds glowed under the simulated dawn. Frost clung to the transparent dome overhead, the frozen world below glittering like shattered glass. Lyra joined her unit for tactical exercises. Instructor Kale, a thin-bodied Zevran with silver skin, tried to maintain protocol. His voice trembled only slightly. Cadet Vance, late arrival to training rotation requires a report. Lyra stopped beside him. Yesterday's evaluation ran long, sir. A few cadets turned their heads. Kale hesitated, then looked away. Proceed to marksmanship simulation. As she walked to the range, she heard the hushed voices again. Not mockery this time, up something else. That's her. The human. The Deathworlder. The word Deathworlder carried both awe and unease. It was meant as an insult once. Now it sounded different. The marksmanship room dimmed as the simulation engaged. Hollow targets appeared in motion, rotating discs representing evasive drones. Lyra adjusted her gauntlet rifle. The weapon recognized her biometrics and emitted a faint hum. Cadet Vance, Kyle said from the booth. This drill tests adaptability. Fire at will. She exhaled slowly, eyes narrowing as the drones accelerated. Her shots came in calm bursts. No wasted movements, no hesitation. Each beam hit center, synchronized with her breathing. When the session ended, the system chimed. 98.7% precision. Record. Human cadet. Silence followed. Then someone muttered, "That's impossible." Kale cleared his throat. Session complete. His voice lacked authority now. Lyra powered down her rifle, placed it on the rack, and left without a word. She reached the observation deck hours later. It was her refuge. A place where she could see the frozen storms of Rika Prime swirling below. The planet looked peaceful from here, though she knew better. Survival was never peaceful. She wasn't alone. Cadet Vance, a voice said behind her. Lyra turned slightly. A slender Verid named Joanne stood there, skin faintly luminous, eyes shifting colors. He was one of the first-year cadets she'd dragged from the acid storm during the simulation that started all this. I heard what they did to you, he said quietly. And that you endured? She finished. He nodded. Tharn's been furious since. He's calling it a disciplinary success, but everyone saw the footage. You didn't break. She studied him for a long moment. And that bothers him more than if I had. Joanne hesitated. He's ordered anyone who shares that footage to be punished. They're calling it sedition. Lyra turned back toward the window. Then delete it. What? He stepped closer, whispering. They're saying your name in every dorm. You gave the lower ranks hope. If they silence this, I didn't come here to inspire rebellion, she said softly. I came here to learn, he frowned. And yet you're teaching them something he can't. She didn't respond. The silence between them stretched, not awkward, just heavy. Then, without another word, Joanne bowed slightly and left. Lyra watched his reflection vanish into the corridor's light. Commander Tharn was waiting when she returned to her quarters. His scaled frame filled the doorway, shadows cutting across his angular face. You've become quite popular, he said. Lyra crossed her arms. That wasn't my intent. No? His tone was almost amused. Do you think the galaxy will interpret your defiance as accidental? I followed your order, she said. You told me to endure. Tharn's eyes glimmered. You mock me with your restraint. Every controlled word is an insult. She met his gaze without blinking. If silence offends you, Commander, perhaps the noise isn't from me. For a moment, he said nothing. Then his tail struck the wall with a sharp crack. You will attend public review tomorrow. The council believes your behavior is contagious. Contagious, she repeated quietly. Like a disease? Exactly, he said. And diseases must be contained. He turned sharply and left, the door sliding shut behind him. That night, the lights in the academy dimmed to twilight. Lyra sat on the edge of her bunk, fingers tracing faint bruises across her forearm. The hum of the artificial gravity system filled the silence. From the corridor outside came faint murmurs. Cadets moving past her room, whispering her name again. She could distinguish different voices. Thirlan, Verid, even Kerr, species that rarely spoke to each other, now united by something unspoken. Her reflection in the window looked calm, but her thoughts churned. She hadn't meant for this to happen. Yet the more Tharn pushed, the more others saw him for what he was. Her endurance had become defiance without her saying a word. A small sound interrupted her thoughts. A coded knock on the door. 3 short taps, 2 long. She opened it cautiously. Joanne stood there again, this time with 3 other cadets. A towering insectoid Vesk, a quiet avian Tyrell, and a nervous Thyrlon with downcast eyes. Joanne spoke first. "They're going to make an example of you tomorrow. We heard Tharn's orders." "I know," she said. The Vesk stepped forward. "You saved my brother in the acid storm." "If they touch you again, we won't stand by." Lyra's voice stayed calm. "You'll do nothing. If you act, he wins. He'll prove humans spread chaos." Tyrell tilted her head. "Then what do we do?" Lyra looked at them. 4 species who'd never stood in the same room before. She spoke softly, her tone like steel beneath silk. "You endure." "That's how we win." They exchanged uncertain looks, but nodded. One by one, they left. Hours later, as the academy cycled into artificial night, Lyra lay awake. The whispers had grown into something else. Quiet footsteps outside her quarters. A slow chant spreading floor by floor. No shouts. No rebellion. Just the same phrase repeated in countless languages. Blending into one sound that reached her through the walls, Lyra Vance, the Deathworld Girl. She turned her face toward the ceiling. Eyes open, heartbeat steady. Tharn wanted silence. Instead, he'd created an echo he could never control. By morning, the corridors would no longer belong to him. They would belong to her name. The summons came at dawn. A cold chime broke through the Academy's artificial night, followed by the metallic voice of the administrative corps. "Cadet Lyra Vance, report to the Grand Assembly Chamber. Immediate compliance required." Lyra rose without hesitation. She'd been expecting this. Her uniform was immaculate, movements precise, deliberate. Outside, the corridors glowed faint blue under the early light. Cadet stood aside as she passed, not in fear, but quiet respect. Her name had traveled faster than any command. By the time she reached the assembly chamber, the seats were full. Rows of officers and instructors ringed the platform above, their expressions carved from authority and doubt. Commander Tharn stood at the center podium, rigid, triumphant. "Cadet Vance," he said as she entered, voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics. "You stand accused of inciting disorder, violating the sanctity of command and spreading unauthorized propaganda." The words echoed around the hall, sterile and rehearsed. Lyra walked to the circular platform, its transparent floor revealing the planet's frozen clouds below. She stopped at the center facing the council. "I spread nothing," she said. They chose to speak. Tharn's tail twitched. "Your endurance has been misinterpreted as rebellion. You've turned this academy into an altar for Deathworld myths." A murmur rippled through the audience, restrained, nervous. Lyra's gaze swept the tiers. Dozens of cadets from different species sat motionless, eyes fixed on her. She spoke calmly. "You fear what you can't command. But fear isn't order, Commander. It's surrender wearing a uniform." The chamber stirred again, louder this time. Tharn raised his claws for silence. "Enough! You have defied protocol at every turn. The Council demands your removal. You will be detained and deported to your colony of origin." 2 sentries approached. Lyra didn't move. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. A deep vibration shook the floor. Alarms shrieked. Across the chamber, control panels flared red. The holographic seal of the Academy blinked, replaced by a flashing warning. "Reactor core instability. Containment breach detected." Officers shouted commands. Doors sealed automatically. Tharn's composure cracked. "This facility is in lockdown. All cadets remain seated." Lyra's eyes darted to the data stream projected on the wall, numbers cascading in frantic rhythm. The reactor's coolant system had failed. She recognized the pattern, intentional override. Someone had sabotaged the failsafe to trigger during the hearing. She turned sharply to Tharn. "You did this!" His scales flared in indignation. "You dare accuse me? Oh, you wanted to prove humanity dangerous. Now you'll blame this on me. Contain her!" Tharn roared. But before the guards could move, the tremor intensified. The floor tilted. Holographic barriers shattered. A plume of heat vented from the lower deck, casting the chamber in crimson light. Panic erupted. Cadets broke formation, some shouting in alien tongues, others clawing for exits. Lyra's instincts took over. She sprinted to the nearest console, overriding the safety locks. "The auxiliary dampeners are offline," she called out, working the controls with practiced precision. "Manual stabilizer access, where is it?" An officer yelled, "Sublevel 2! Through the east corridor!" She didn't wait for permission. The chamber filled with smoke as conduits burst. She moved through the chaos, weaving between cadets and debris. Behind her, Tharn shouted orders no one obeyed. The corridor to Sublevel 2 was half collapsed, sparks raining from torn cables. Lyra dropped to her knees and crawled through the gap. The roar of machinery grew louder. At the end of the tunnel, she found the stabilizer chamber, a circular vault of glowing rings and hissing coolant lines. The control board blinked red. Pressure readings soared toward critical. She pulled the manual override lever. It jammed halfway. Footsteps echoed behind her. She turned to see Joanne and the Vesk cadet from before, both covered in soot. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Joanne shook his head. "You saved us once." "It's our turn," the Vesk grunted and grabbed the lever beside her. Together, they forced it down. The system hissed, fighting back, but the stabilizer rings began to realign. The readings slowed, edging toward safety. A voice crackled through the intercom. Tharn's, frantic. "Step away from the core, human! You'll destroy everything!" Lyra pressed the comm switch. "Already did, Commander." "You just didn't expect me to fix it." The reactor's glow dimmed. The vibration subsided. For a moment, the entire academy went silent. Then the lights steadied, systems returning to normal. She leaned against the wall, breath heavy. The others stared at her in stunned relief. Joanne whispered, "You just saved them all." "No," she said. "I just stopped one man's lie from killing everyone." Hours later, the council reconvened in the same chamber, now repaired but scarred. The evidence was clear. The sabotage code bore Tharn's access signature. He stood restrained before the tribunal, his arrogance stripped away. "You can't prove intent," he hissed. The presiding officer replied coldly, "Intent is irrelevant when the result speaks louder." Lyra stood at the back, silent. When Tharn was escorted out, he turned his head slightly, eyes burning with hate. "You think this changes anything?" he spat. "You'll still be feared," she met his gaze. "Then fear will learn manners." The hall remained silent as the doors sealed behind him. After the proceedings, Lyra walked through the academy's upper corridor. The world below still glimmered with its frozen storms, endless and wild. For once the hallways were filled, cadets lining both sides, standing at attention. No one spoke. As she passed, they raised their hands to their chests, not the formal salute of their species, but the human gesture they'd seen her use before every mission, a simple closed fist over the heart. The sound of boots on alloy echoed behind her, rhythmic. Unified growing louder, whispers followed, soft and reverent. "Deathworld Girl, Lyra Vance. She stood for us." Her steps didn't falter, but inside she felt the weight of it. What began as punishment had become legend. The corridors, once instruments of humiliation, now carried her story in their silence. She reached the viewport overlooking Rika Prime. Frost curled along the glass like veins of silver. Joanne approached quietly. "They're saying your name across every station now," he said. "Even the outer colonies are talking about you." "I didn't want that," she said. "I know," he replied. "That's why it matters." They stood in silence, watching the storms below. After a moment, she turned away. "Send me back to Earth. I've learned enough here." Joanne frowned. "You'd just leave?" "Legends don't live in halls," she said softly. "They echo there," he nodded slowly. "They'll remember." Lyra's gaze drifted to the corridor one last time. The cadets had dispersed, but their presence lingered, a hum beneath the metal, alive and permanent. As she walked toward the shuttle bay, the intercom crackled with static. Then a single phrase repeated through every speaker, in the voice of the Academy's AI. "Cadet Lyra Vance, exemplary conduct recorded. Status, unbroken." A small smile touched her lips. The door closed behind her, sealing the sound inside, and long after she was gone, the hallway still whispered her name, not as defiance, not as fear, but as truth carved into memory. They tried to punish the Deathworld Girl. Now the hallways echo her name. The shuttle left orbit in silence. From its viewport, the Corinth Academy dwindled to a glimmer, a ring of light vanishing against the pale storms of Rika Prime. Lyra sat in the forward seat, hands clasped on her lap, eyes fixed on the receding world. The hum of engines was steady, too steady, a sound that left too much room for thought. It had been 6 days since the tribunal. Commander Tharn was gone, stripped of rank and awaiting transfer to a judicial colony. The academy had reopened, quieter but not unchanged. Her name still lingered there, spoken with a reverence that felt heavier than any punishment. She hadn't asked for ceremony or farewells. When the transport officer saluted her before departure, she simply nodded. "Keep them alive," she had said. That was all. Now the void stretched ahead, black, endless, and familiar. A voice broke her focus. Cadet Vance? Or should I say Lieutenant Vance? She turned. A tall figure stood in the aisle, Captain Aaron Malice, human liaison from the Galactic Accord Fleet. His uniform bore no insignia beyond a single silver stripe, authority without ostentation. Lyra blinked once. "Promotion?" "Provisional," he replied, taking the seat across from her. "The council decided you've earned it. You kept a galactic institution from imploding. That counts for something." She studied him carefully. "And what does it cost?" Malice smiled faintly. "You learn fast. The Accord wants to meet you. Meet me or measure me? Both." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "You made history, Vance. The first human to endure Thyrolon discipline and walk away stronger. They can't decide if that terrifies them or excites them." Lyra's gaze returned to the viewport. Maybe both are right. The meeting took place 2 days later aboard the Ardent Spear, a diplomatic dreadnought orbiting a neutral moon. Its corridors gleamed with sterile perfection, walls so polished they reflected everything, even unease. Lyra followed Captain Malice through the main atrium. Representatives from 6 species watched her pass. Some nodded in quiet respect. Others whispered. The weight of curiosity was almost tangible. At the end of the hall stood a vast circular chamber, its center dominated by a single dais of pale light. The council gathered there, 6 figures, each from a different world, bound by law but divided by fear. High Chancellor Emmet, a Kerr with translucent skin that shimmered like glass, spoke first. "Cadet, pardon, Lieutenant Vance. Humanity's resilience is remarkable. The footage from Corinth has traveled further than your command structure anticipated." Lyra inclined her head. "That wasn't my intention." "Intent is irrelevant," Emmet said. "Perception defines reality in this accord, and perception of humans has changed." A second counselor, a Thyrlan female with deep violet scales, hissed softly. "Her endurance has inspired defiance in junior species. We've seen disturbances in the academies, recruits questioning authority. Discipline falters," Malice cut in smoothly. "Discipline or fear, counselor?" "There's a difference," the Thyrlan's eyes flashed. "Fear maintains order." Lyra's voice, though calm, sliced through the tension. "Then maybe order needs courage instead?" Silence followed. The counselors exchanged glances. Emmet leaned back, observing her. "You speak like a soldier who understands diplomacy better than diplomats. Tell me, Lieutenant, what do humans want?" Lyra thought carefully before answering. "To belong, but not by imitation. And if belonging means obedience, then we'll stand apart," she said quietly. "But we'll still stand," the chamber stilled. For a moment no one spoke. Then Emmett's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "That, Lieutenant, is what they fear most, that you'll choose to stand alone and others will follow." He dismissed the assembly with a wave of his hand. "Our discussion is concluded. Humanity's status remains under review." Later, in her assigned quarters aboard the Ardent Spear, Lyra sat at the desk reviewing the council transcript. Every word felt like a calculation, respect laced with apprehension. She'd been studied like a phenomenon, not a person. The door chimed once. "Enter," she said. Captain Malice stepped inside, carrying 2 metal flasks. Synth coffee. Not Earth quality, but close enough. She accepted one. You didn't come just to share caffeine? He grinned. Sharp as ever. The Accord wants you back on Earth for debriefing, but there's another offer, one not written on record. Let me guess, she said. Recruitment. Observation. He leaned against the wall. They're forming a cross-species peacekeeping task force. They need someone the galaxy listens to, someone who can stand in a room full of predators and not flinch. Lyra turned the flask slowly between her hands. They still think endurance is a weapon. Maybe it is, Malice said. Sometimes survival is defiance. She looked up. And what if I refuse? He shrugged. Then you go home. You disappear into the quiet. But the story won't. It's already moving faster than you can stop it. She smiled faintly. Stories always move faster than truth. Then give them a better one, he replied, setting his empty flask down. Decide what kind of legend you want to be. The girl who endured, or the one who led. When he left, the cabin fell silent again. She turned off the lights and looked out at the void, a darkness scattered with stars. That night, the dream came. She stood once more in the gravity chamber, but the walls were gone. Around her stretched an endless field of shattered metal. Every species she'd met, Thierland, Verid, Vesk, Kerr, stood watching. None spoke. She raised her hand, and instead of mockery, they saluted. The echo of that single gesture rippled outward until it touched the horizon. When she woke, the hum of the engines was steady again, but her decision was clear. The next morning, Lyra found Malice on the observation deck. Tell the council, she said. I'll take their offer. He turned, surprised. You're sure? They wanted a lesson in control. I'll give them one, not through fear, but through example. Malice nodded slowly. Then we begin at once. The Accord will assign your unit within the week. As he left, Lyra looked down at the moon below, barren, silent, cold. Yet from its edge, the stars seemed sharper, closer. She spoke softly to herself. Let them measure Earth by what we build next. Days later, the ardent spear departed orbit. A new insignia had been painted beside the Accord's crest, a simple emblem, a human hand encircling a flame. It wasn't official, not yet, but symbols had power. In the command bay, Malice watched the broadcast feed. Across dozens of colonies, screens displayed the same headline. Human Cadet prevents galactic disaster. Accord names her peace envoy. He smiled faintly. They'll follow you, you know. Lyra adjusted her gloves, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. Then I'd better lead them somewhere worth following. Hours later, as the ship accelerated toward jump velocity, the internal comm crackled. A faint recording played through every deck. An audio fragment recovered from the Corinth Academy's archives. Her voice, calm and unyielding. You wanted to see what a Deathworlder can endure. Keep watching. The crew turned their heads toward the sound. For some, it was history. For others, a reminder. To Lyra, it was neither. It was the past, proof of what endurance could become when pointed toward purpose. She stood at the viewport, the stars streaking into luminous lines as the ship leapt into hyperspace. The reflection in the glass was still, eyes unwavering. Humanity had entered the Accord as an anomaly. It would remain as something else entirely, and somewhere, far behind, in the cold halls of Corinth Academy, her name still echoed, not as a memory, but as a beginning.